All right, we are live with our very exclusive payments panel. We have 20 minutes to talk about the world of payments and how they're changing with AI. My name is Jake Peters. I'm one of the co-founders of Fora and our head of product and technology based here in New York. And I'm joined by three other experts in the travel payment space. We're going to talk a little bit about the effects of AI on each of our businesses. So without further ado, I'll ask each person to introduce themselves, say a little bit about what they're working on, and then we'll get into the discussion. So Liza, why don't you go first? Tell us where you are, what you do, and what your company does. Whoop.
Oh, I'm clearly have not learned the unmute button in the many years we've been doing this since COVID. But I'm Liza Carew. I'm founder and CEO at Chexy. Chexy is a payments company that enables you to pay rent, utilities, insurance, all kinds of bills that typically you cannot pay with credit card. We enable you to do that with credit card through a multi-purpose wallet setup. And actually the primary driver for people to do that is so that they can earn rewards and then redeem those rewards and travel. We're based in Canada. We're a Canadian fintech company. So excited to talk about the changes we're seeing here.
That's great. Welcome. Andrew.
Right. Hi, everybody. Andrew Beckmann here representing Stripe. I lead our travel and hospitality efforts. And, a lot of people think of Stripe as a payments company, which is true, but we are much more. In a nutshell, within travel, we'll help brands with driving more direct bookings or optimizing conversion, whether digitally or in person, working with brands to open up new ancillary revenue streams like membership and subscription models, or having that unified commerce view of both in person and digital. And then we also do a lot of things on the back end. So helping brands move money more intelligently for B2B payments. And then we do some work around fraud and chargebacks as well. So think of us as a financial infrastructure platform that helps travel companies grow.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. And Harris.
Hi, everyone. My name is Harris Nghiem. I'm with PayCompass. We are based out of Phoenix, Arizona. I am in charge of our digital growth. We are in the merchant processing space, specializing in the travel vertical. We've been using AI for all kinds of things in chargeback prevention, in being able to detect fraud early on in the application stage, and many other areas.
Oh, that's great. All right. So we have three different perspectives here. Liza, why don't we talk about you? And when did you found Chexy?
So the company was founded in 2022, started processing payments in 2023. We're now doing over $1 billion run rate in TPV. So I've grown quite rapidly through actually a combination of loyalty partnerships, like with Airplan, which is an Air Canada loyalty program. Have seen kind of a lot of interesting behavior. So happy to chat about how I think AI is changing, I think especially the rewards and loyalty landscape.
Yeah. And so you started, the LLMs were launched, I guess the same year, really, you started your business. So was your business plan factoring that in, or how did you adjust with the sort of onslaught of AI?
Not really. Because we are a traditional kind of payments company, for us, it's about innovation in spaces around that credit card acceptance is so far behind. So actually, we're just kind of catching up to that. Utility companies, landlords, et cetera, they're not really thinking about LLM and payments yet. They're still trying to catch up to just digitization of payments. But what we have seen is that specifically from a Chexy standpoint, the main driver of why somebody would want to use a card for one of these largest expenses is to be able to earn rewards on, rent, utility, insurance, these really massive ticket sizes that, kind of account for 60-70% of your wallet on average. And what we have seen with AI in the last 2 years in this space is that there's now a lot of companies like the Seats.Arrows and Roam Travels of the world that are using AI on how to make redemptions of rewards currencies much better for the customer. What is an interesting trend, though, is that obviously if you know the loyalty space, you know that companies that run loyalty programs, they actually rely on a amount of customers not redeeming the points or not redeeming them well, so that you have like 10% really benefiting from great redemptions, and then 90% of the tail really doesn't. If it's becomes super easy with AI to redeem points on travel, that actually erodes a lot of the value in these programs, and these programs will eventually become less and less valuable. So it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how fast companies catch up to this, because the more sophisticated users become in the travel redemption and loyalty redemption space, when it comes to this type of stuff, the more expensive it becomes to run these programs, and what does that actually mean from like the erosion of value and a points value standpoint. It's something that I'm curious to see.
Yeah, as a former recovering or as a recovering former consultant, I have a lot of points that I'm not able to use, and it's very sad when I go and watch the current values of the points constantly decline. So we have a partnership with Point Me at Fora and it's amazing what you can find. So I'm also very curious to watch this space. Andrew, when we before the panel, we talked about how, I mean, Stripe obviously existed for a long time before AI. How has AI changed? Maybe if you could focus specifically on some of the like travel use cases, since that's
Yeah.
your focus.
Well, I would say, there's kind of two ways I think about AI, kind of what has Stripe been doing with AI historically and kind of where I see it going. I think the exciting piece is, to date, AI has been deeply embedded in everything Stripe has done, whether it's using AI and all the data that we have to surface the right payment type to the right person in the right location, or ensuring that transactions go through, or intelligently moving money across like a hotel franchise ecosystem, or fraud or chargebacks. So that's one piece, and I think that's always getting better. Not many people know this, but we actually have the industry's only payments LLM that we use internally, called the Payments Foundation model, which uses all of the insane data that you can imagine we'd have. We processed over 1% of global GDP last year and saw over 90% of the world's credit cards. So that just gives us a lot of good data to really kind of augment the things that we would do now that tie to the value prop I was saying earlier around driving direct bookings, launching new revenue streams. Where I get really excited, though, is thinking about AI and what it means for Stripe in the future, and which is almost now, if you will. And that's really the hot topic around agentic commerce, and specifically, what does that mean for the travel industry? I'm sure there have been other talks on this, but if you think about, more and more people are using new channels to do their search. So whether it's the LLMs like the chat GPTs, or looking for those kind of agentic conversational searches on some of the travel websites they may already go to. But a lot of people aren't yet booking, and I think that's going to change very quickly, and Stripe is playing a big role in that. Just a few weeks ago, Stripe made some big announcements that we're really aiming to provide the foundational infrastructure to enable the commerce, or the transaction piece of agentic commerce. We got a couple new tools that are doing that. One is called the Agentic Commerce Protocol, that we launched with OpenAI, but it's open sourced. But basically what that protocol is going to allow brands to do is to let agents really read and interact with the checkout experiences of merchants. So you can imagine, an agent referencing a travel brand's checkout flow and allowing for that agentic activity. And then we also have something called a shared payment token, which will make sure that agentic commerce is safe and secure from a payments perspective. So kind of with those building blocks, now Stripe is going to start enabling commerce. So in travel already, we have the tools to enable, take a big hotel chain, I won't name names yet, but like big hotel chains could create conversational agentic travel experiences on their websites now with Stripe technology. In the future, I could see a world where maybe you can book travel instantly within a chat GPT. We just started doing that on the retail side with Etsy and Shopify, so I could see a world where that comes. And then I think of other opportunities like social. Like, what if you're looking at an Instagram reel that's like got a really cool trip recap and you want an agent to book and buy that experience for you and all the components that that requires? Boom, done. Or other platforms. So I'm excited to see where this is going, but I think what's great is, Stripe is basically building those kind of the transaction piece of agentic commerce, and kind of where it goes, hopefully we can be part of that.
That's interesting. So you definitely answered one of the questions that was asked earlier about
Okay.
conversational checkout. Um, so thank you for that as well. And Harris, I'd love to hear your perspective on, as we were talking about in the chat, how even before LLMs, you may or may not have been using AI, and what's changed maybe with the launch of LLMs and how you're thinking about the future.
Yeah, sure. So being on the growth side is not only increasing our kind of digital exposure, but also helping our merchants increase their kind of processing volume. Um, we have a lot of merchants right now who are undergoing a lot of policy changes and compliant changes due to the new VAMP uh, implementations by Visa. So what we're doing with AI is we're helping our merchants understand where there could be potentially fraud by listening in on calls, by understanding customer transcripts, by collecting evidence before the chargebacks are actually submitted. And it's actually helping with a lot of revenue recovery. So by having them just like monitor all these transactions, we've been able to cut the chargeback ratio substantially.
Oh, that's really interesting. How have you found like implementing the AI technology to do all of that processing in your stack?
Sure. So a lot of our clients don't have the manpower, just the know-how to properly submit the evidence for these chargebacks. By implementing AI, we've trained it to look for certain standards. We've trained it to have formal training, like looking for different things that would help win these chargebacks at the highest rate possible. Instead of them just submitting it on their own, they have now a resource to even just talk to or help monitor these kind of interactions with the customers.
Okay, that's really interesting. We deal with a significant amount of chargeback issues here and growing, and these kinds of it's the thing you said about actually being able to look at the conversations and having all this additional insight into the full scope of the transaction that's not always present in the actual documentation is really interesting to me, because this is exactly an issue that we face at Fora. Like, what was the conversation like between the advisor and the client? Was there intention to defraud, or was this actually like a legitimate chargeback issue, or was there a mistake?
Yeah, exactly. And
How do you gather all this?
it also listens for different keywords that might trigger chargebacks to be won in the customer case. So we'll go back and review that with the merchant and say, hey, you can't use this word or this phrase because it's somewhat misleading. So if the customer comes back and issues a chargeback, then
Mm,
the probability of them winning is much higher if you don't use those type of words or the phrases.
that's really interesting. So you've created essentially like a flywheel to take the learnings and bring them back to the training cycle, or into training to basically improve the process.
Yep,
There's a
exactly.
question. Andre asked, what is the percentage you mentioned that you are recovering?
So before our chargeback ratio, especially in the travel space, it's considerably higher because we have high ticket, low volume, right? So if a merchant has 100 transactions a month and one of those are chargeback, that's a 10% chargeback rate. But across the board, we've seen about a 20 to 30% reduction in chargebacks won by the customer.
Okay, that's interesting. Andre, let us know if you have a follow-up question to that. I'm also just going to work backwards. So, Andrew, there was a question from Andre
Hmm.
about how Stripe sits in the competitive landscape of your your competitors. I don't want to say just merchant acquirers, because I think you facilitate transactions on both sides. But
Yeah.
if you could speak freely, who do you think is also doing interesting work similar to what you're doing in this area,
Well, I think
or
it
do you guys
depends.
see yourself different?
Yeah, I think it depends on the use case, right? Like I can, because we're this broader financial infrastructure platform, we compete with the big payment processors like the Adyen's, the Checkouts, et cetera of the world. We actually do fraud and chargeback disputes. So I guess technically we would be competing with you, Harris. Sorry. um, but as we think about agentic, that's an area where I think we're really putting a stake in the ground first. That agentic commerce protocol that we co-developed with OpenAI, we're the only ones that have done that. PayPal recently mentioned that they're going to start trying to implement instant checkout in LLMs, but it's using the agentic travel or the agentic commerce protocol that we've developed. So I think Stripe is unique in creating the kind of core infra layer. I'm sure that will evolve over time. But yeah, it's a good question, Andre. I wish it were simple to say there was one player we look at as a competitor. We kind of have a lot of competition and frenemies, if you will.
I actually have a question, Andrew, Jake, if you don't mind. Do you
Yeah.
think that the work you're doing on integrating I think it's agentic commerce into travel will actually reduce the cost of travel, or will it increase the cost of travel? And the reason I'm asking is because specifically in the travel space, there's so much dynamic pricing, right, for hotels and flights. And if, for example, I as a customer am using, kind of similar to my point earlier around rewards, if I as a customer am using a super sophisticated agent to basically say, it's like, I want you to watch this space and I want you to book this trip to optimize for cost, you know, how does that work? Like, because on one end, I anticipate that there's going to be some revenue degradation potentially for these companies, but at the same time, like if they can prevent chargebacks, maybe they can make that up in their fraud, kind of winning.
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think, again, there's so many nuances because obviously travel has so many different kind of sub verticals like hotels, planes. And then there's also so many different customer segments, from the crazy loyalty point nerds like myself to people like my parents who are just like, we just want to go with whatever's cheapest. So that's a tough question to answer. But what I can say is I think taking inspiration from other kind of forward looking payment modalities like digital wallets or buy now, pay laters, anything that's reducing the friction for that payment experience tends to may help people find lower costs, but also tends to help them or encourage travelers to book more. So if it's seamless and easy when you check in with your hotel and you don't have to pull out your credit card all over the venue, you might also increase your spend on that trip, from food and beverage to tours and activities. And I can imagine digitally that's the same thing. Like if it's seamless and an agent is packaging your dream trip off of that Instagram reel, and all you have to do is click a button to buy it, you might be willing to spend a little bit more than you would otherwise. So I think the jury's still out, but I'd be optimistic that it would be one of these rare kind of win-win situations for both the travel supplier and the traveler themselves.
I did get a question from someone in the audience around dynamic pricing, and we've seen a lot of news about this from Delta and other brands trying to move to dynamic pricing. Curious for the panel's view, anyone can answer on, does AI eventually make dynamic pricing and payments fully synchronized? Are you working on this in any of or seeing this happen across any of your businesses?
I mean, I think dynamic pricing is going to become really, really complicated. And it's probably actually will revert more to a mean, right? If everybody is 100% efficient about their trips, then dynamic pricing kind of goes away. So I don't know. I think like Andrew said, the jury is still out. But right now, like dynamic pricing is super, like especially in loyalty space, like in the redemption of points. Like anyone that the points nerd is, they know it's all about dynamic redemption, and there are specific times of the year the specific airlines release their like inventory for specific trips and hotels, and so you have to be incredibly like sophisticated to take advantage of that. Listen, if like my agent is way more smarter than me and way more efficient, and gets that deal every single time, that will eventually go away and it will just be kind of standard pricing, I think.
The only other thing I would just echo is I think dynamic pricing is unique in travel than it is for typical retail, and I think that adds extra complexities and things to figure out, which is we don't, I think, quite have all the answers yet, but it's another area where I say kind of watch this space, because I think that we'll be learning a lot here in the near term.
Okay, I think we might have lost Jake, or maybe
he's
not.
Here.
Okay. I don't know. Can you hear? Okay, there we go. I'm back. I clicked something and I got off stage. I just wanted to say, I think we're at time. This was incredibly short, but obviously a lot to talk about, and there's more questions coming in. So thank you for each participating. Thanks to the audience for your questions and snarky comments. I appreciated it, and look forward to discussing more.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.